So good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. Welcome to today's Lunch and Learn. My name is Morgan Russell. My pronouns are they, them, and I've been with Decisions for a year and a half now. I'm on the solutions engineering team and looking forward to going through what questions y'all have today. If we don't have any questions, we can look at a sample project that I've got prepped up for us. So just like before, if you've been to any of the lunch and learns, you can raise your hand to come off mute and say your question. Otherwise, you can type it in chat and we'll answer it that way. Happy Monday. Feels like it was a quick start to the day. We'll give some people some more time to roll in if we have anybody else, but if anybody has any questions, feel free to put those in chat or to raise your hand there. Do you want to say it out loud instead? Right, we'll give everybody here another minute or so and dive right in. Again, like always, you can do your questions through the chat feature, or you can raise your hand if you'd rather verbalize your question. We'll put you off mute that way. And if we've got nothing question-wise submitted in a minute here, I'll just pop over to my environment and we'll look at a sample project that was created a while ago by a co-worker to make bingo boards. So that'll be fun if if we don't have any questions otherwise. All right, let's pop over there now. Let's see, got it on my local. So right here, I'm just inside a decisions project that was made by one of our sales engineers and just made this project to generate bingo cards to use for a during, heavy quarantine, nobody could see each other time there. So as a fun activity using decisions, we made bingo cards and played bingo together on a call. I believe it was a Friday, maybe at like 6:30. But I haven't gone through myself previously through this project to actually take a look at it and all the elements. So thought that could be an interesting thing to take a look at today. But as always, you can submit any questions during this. If you have questions thought of ahead of time or during, raise your hand or put those in chat. But it looks like off the bat here, we don't have any yet. So we've got a simple database structure here, which is nice and light, called bingo row. I'm just going to take a look at what's actually in there. So for each column, we have the letter are just a string. That's what was built here. And it is a super class. So let's go in and take a look at our actual generate bingo card flow. Okay, so it's a little bit, I'm on checkpoint. I love checkpoints, best thing you can do, just in case we wanted to ever go back and see what this flow was before me. I'm gonna do it before Morgan checkpoint. But this could use a little bit of cleaning up here. So it gets inputted with bingo row list, to a row of that type of bingo row, to a list of that type there. So I can move some of my windows around here. Okay, and it goes through a loop. Oh, we do have a question. So why does the pause flow step cause current data to be lost? I believe it makes it async, our pause data step. We can test that out though. I will close and save out of here. And when it's async, it could be acted on by another user. Let's create a simple flow real quick. Pause. Pause test. Take a look at that. I believe it's because also different things could have been going on in the system while it was paused. Async, you can't keep that. So I believe that's intended. Sorry, what's our actual step called for that? Is it pause flow? So even if you're just using it to wait, time. So if we want it to kick back off in a certain amount of time, we can compute the date. It'll be how many seconds in the future. Wouldn't make sense to do it in the past for this use case here. So we're going to compute the date with a constant offset of 5 seconds. And we do have that warning, pausing 15 minutes. Save on pause should be enabled. My cord on my keyboard there, lining this up a little bit. Horizontally distribute that, center it. Let's look on if our data actually lets us know if that's async. So while this flow is paused, other things could be taking actions. You know, if this was kicking off an assignment or working some other task, that current user could change. It could pass into a different hands. And async flows, that current user data changes. So I believe that is why that causes that to be lost. So what you could do, if you're trying to use potentially the current user data, you could create it and kind of save it as another name and not be pulling from the flow data in your flow. So you're not relying on that input here, flow data, to prove that, but you're kind of locking it in. So in your steps, you can pull in a create data step, should be in your favorites. And depending on what information you need, you could add those inputs here. So if we want, you know, the starting user email, you could create an input for that. That would just be a string. Goes in here, map it in from the current user data. So that would be, we said current email string, so we can just snag. Actually, it's one more out. You could get it from the account there, but we just have current user email. So now we have this variable that would be checked there. Let me rename my step for us, create starting user email. And so now if we wanted to show that we still have that data, you could use a, for this use case, just a pop up on the other side. So whatever kind of data you were maybe filtering from or passing into a port, you could use that method there. I'm just doing a quick little pop-up just to show us that that information hasn't changed. And since it's on my local here, we're not going to give a pop-up to anyone else. We'll put it in the center. Okay, so now we can save and debug that. Still runs, it still pauses for our 5 seconds that we specified. And then it moves up. Didn't show our pop-up though, did it? So we can see that it passed it in. Current user is my email. That's correct. The input here did pass in that. Interesting why it didn't actually show us our pop-up, but that data was still accessible here and you can see that it moved through. Does that answer your question there? Are they anonymous attendee? So if there's any follow-up on that, I'd be happy to work a little bit more on that use case, but that's what I would do if I was using that current user information, needed to pause the flow. I would save it using a create data step and then reference that. Interesting with the pop-up. Let me see if I can mess with that a little bit. Constant test, input, entity ID. Let's just first do a test with our pop-up. Maybe it's because it's the current session, so it doesn't want to run it. We'll debug to see if it was anything with that input being mapped. Didn't show an error though, so I'm thinking it's that how we're running it. Okay, so it wasn't the mapping since we just changed that, so I'll swap that back to being select from flow, pulling that in. Let's try to save it and run this flow from the outside. Oh, must have clicked that twice. We do not need a copy. So that was our pause test flow. I'm just going to run it here. Our pop-up did not run there either. That's something interesting to look at for. Doesn't look like it logged anything. There's no errors. We could check our logs. Sorry, my folders are kind of.
Did you specify the account you want to display it to?
Let's take a look.
I know with notifications, since you're using a step that was switched to the system context, it's probably displaying that pop-up to the system user, and that's not you.
Gotcha, absolutely. So doing that pause flow, swapped it to system. That would make sense. So let's swap it and change it to, actually, can we select that from flow there? Jared, do you know if you can specify that account? That doesn't look like it.
I don't believe we can take that from a variable.
That's okay. So that has to be a constant. No worries there. So we know we're trying to show it to ourselves in our test environment. So should be able to save and run that now. Thanks so much. There, Jared.
Yeah, no problem.
So let's see, we pause, wait our good little 5 seconds or however long that was implemented. There we go. And it's pulling in that value. So that was another good test to see your show pop-up is going to specify to whoever's the maybe current user in the flow. So I was trying to show to the actual system versus our account. Hopefully that worked for you there as well. Cool. All right. So I will close and save out of there. We'll pop back over to, I think it was, yeah, our bingo board. Unless we have any other questions that come in for us. Cool. All right, back on our bingo card. We were looking at bingo card. Actually, let's start at row because it seems like the row gets generated first. All right, so this is a big one. Let's see. We can track down who made this. This was Bracy. He probably made this very quick. Let me quick do it before Morgan checkpoint as well. and try to clean this up a little bit, rename steps so it's more understandable there. So we start off at the top. We're getting our max, a random int with a max and min. So we're probably getting, yeah, the row. So a number for bingo B. So we'll rename that, get random int for, I guess, column B there. And that's coming up, that's updating, changing value on bingo.b. And bingo was our import, our input there. So the particular bingo row. So that's updating what number is on that value. And as best practice, we like to move the lines. So these are hooked together. See, they're grouped. So I'm going to ungroup them so I can move those around. And we want to have our rows coming out, our links coming out of different sides here. Okay, so we get column B. We're checking now to see if this list is null. So we're going to say bingo row is null. So we know what that's doing there. And if it is null, we go and I guess build this list. And if it's not null, we go down and check another step here in a simple rule. Just gonna periodically save. All right, so string is in list. So it's case insensitive. So even if something is capitalized, we're matching it, it will not matter. It'll be indifferent there. So we're saying string is in list. So this string, bingo B, is it in this list of all B? So is it already existing in the row essentially? You know, when we build a bingo board, we're going to say, oh, is this card or this bingo square? That one's already in this row. So that's what it's checking for. So if it is already in the list, so we can rename that to say is, let's call it item. Item or prompt might be a little easier. Prompt, is it in column already? So if it is in column already, it goes back and gets another random number. So that makes sense. We want to get another item to fill. And if the bingo row is, I dropped the is there. This list is null. We go and start to the next. Then we go here. Probably this is our next row. Yeah, we're on I now. So this is B. There's a lot of repeated logic here. So looking at it from a point of optimization, we'd probably want to subflow this out since we're probably going through the same two steps there, checking to see, oh, is this bingo row null? And is the prompt already in that column? Looks like that's happening multiple times. And if we quickly scroll across here, grab my scroll there, we can see that that is what's happening for each column of our bingo board. So that's something that we'll want to subflow out instead. So here we're getting a random number, updating it. So let's see if we can make our subflow to fix this up a little bit. So I'm a checkpoint before subflow creation. So we know we want these two steps and honestly the random int part as well. So this might be something where we go through each part. Since they're in a, go check the data explorer, since it's in a structure though, I think it's each letter here. Still think we could go through it all. Or just use one subflow and go through the same subflow each time passing in the row. Let's try it out. So I'm going to go to our toolbox and do our, just a new flow step, run subflow here. Look to see what we're going to need in there. So we pass through the row, so we'll need the int of it. Let's check what this output is actually sending out. Probably that list. the bingo row list. And our bingo row list is just a list of all the strings for each letter. All the different letters. Okay. So that's what we want to build out. This is making each row in bingo. So it grabs one for each letter. Okay. So in our flow, and I am going to, while we're out here, and these are our nicely renamed ones, I'm going to group these. I'm going to use our fantastic clipboard and we're going to copy them. Probably drag these all inside here. And we're going to create a new flow. And this is our nice new kind of stylized 1-for-7 as far as the creating an element here. And this is going to be our individual row. So I'm going to say build or prompt selection. Prompt selection per letter. And so inside here, I'm going to go to now my available clipboard since I'd recently copied items and drag out those 3 steps that I had copied, and they're still grouped. So right now they're all still locked together. So if I want to, whoop, looks like I got a little warp there moving around. If I want to ungroup them, move them around, you just select one of them, hit ungroup up top. Let's see if we can adjust these lines. All right. It looks like what it's actually doing, since it updates an individual item, we could output just that item name instead of what it was doing, which was changing value on the given input. So let's take a look. Previously, it was outputting on bingo B. So instead, we want it to change value on what we passed in, because we're going to pass in an individual letter or the individual input, update that at the end, change value at the output. So here, we're going to actually go to pick, we need to put our new input. So our input here, we're not using a design pattern, we're just defining it individually. This is going to be the letter index, I believe is what it's called, or int. These can be changed depending on if there's other variable names. Obviously, you want to keep your variable names consistent throughout your project. Since I didn't build this off the bat, I'm not sure if this number is referenced other places, but we can always go back through and modify it since it is a smaller project. And as far as naming, you also want to be consistent with your naming conventions. On the solutions team, not sure if PS has a different rule, but probably very similar. We do Pascal case, so every letter or every start of the word, the first letter is capitalized. So this one's letter index is capitalized on both of those words there. So we create that as our start, and that's actually what we're going to be updating. So we're given a certain one, we want to update it here. So we're going to pick that to change value, meaning it's updating that value with whatever the output here from that min of 1, max of 15. So we get our random 1. And now we're going to need the bingo board list. So this whole row, we're going to make this as an input. So if it's already selecting or it's missing something, you won't have this add input. This is in 6 as well. You won't have this add input off the bat unless it's trying to select something. To get it there, if you already have, if this was cleared per se, you can hit pick and then close, and then add input is now available. You just name it, and what it does is it creates of whatever type you're looking at. This one's probably not the best example for it since it takes it of an object, but it'll work. And then adds that to your start step as an input. So now if we go back and look, you can also see it in the above header. We now have a list of objects coming in. But since we know that's a particular type, let's change that. So it's actually bingo row is our type, and I believe it's a list. We'll check on that on the outer flow. Oh, must double click there, close and back out of that. So now maybe it was just one item. We'll swap. See if, yeah, since it's taking an object, it'll accept that as well. So it's checking is whatever you pass into it, it's any object in the system. Is that null or not? So let's rename our steps since this one did not come through. So we're saying is bingo row. Is that null? And then we're checking to see prompt is already in list. And since there's no bingo here, this one was that input that we replaced. We're gonna change that to be what we're importing, which is that letter index. Now this is our subflow. I think we will need to pass something out here. Probably the final letter index, I'm thinking. Checking back to see if we do anything with that initial list here as we go. But this looks like good for our subflow. So whatever letter we're passing in, you pass it in, checks to grabs a random number. Rename that real quick. Random int. Check to see if the list is null. As long as it's null, we can go and check to see if it's already existing there. If it is already existing, we want to put a different item in that row. So we go back and get another number and then check before we move forward. So that should be good for now. Let's go back and see if there's anything else that happens. Ah, here we go. So selective update on the bingo row is the element that we have not taken into account. But all these other ones are, this is what we'll be replacing. Because this repeated set of logic is for every single letter there in our bingo. So I'm gonna save and checkpoint. Taking a checkpoint does save it. I'm just bad habit of doing both. So this will be before implementing Subflow. All right, so off the bat, I'm going to start it with our second one since this is a little bit more structured here. So this is pulling in and looking at our second letter I. So we're going to swap where that is for our subflow. Kind of move these together away. Probably throw them away, but for now, let's just keep them there. And looking at what we have, let's actually put this here so we can kind of build this direction a little bit more. This is kind of messy. Let me see if I can move some of these items away as we take a look at it. Okay. This got all jumbly. So now we're going to pass in. So it takes it already, because the naming convention is the same, already mapped in that bingo rows list, which was the right type. It was a list of that simple data structure bingo row. And we want to look at, since this letter, we're going to look at I. So I'm going to rename this to say that we're looking at letter I there. And we're going to pick it from bingo and just this string I. So they were using it as a string, it's updating it. Since it's a different type, what we can do there is run a converter. So there's the simple string to int. Here we go, string to int. And then we'll select now that int from flow. So bingo, I, that. What we should also do here, let's save real quick, and then I guess I should have debugged it at the very beginning before. That's okay. let's actually go through and edit this and just debug it on this level. So leave that null, 3. So if it's null, it goes straight to the end. So we'll add if bingo already has 3, 4, 7, 2, and 9. And let's just save it as a unit test. Unit tests are always good to have. So we're saying this test will be, it's an existing number. So existing prompt. So we're running through, it's the same prompt. We're passing in 3 and we already have 3 on B. So prompt. Let's run that through. So we went through and said, was it already in list? It said no. Let's take a look at that. 3, 5. Okay, I guess that was the other number here. So let's right click. We're passing in, the ID is null, the letter is 3. Okay, the index of the actual number, I guess there. So it's not particularly checking. So maybe what it's doing on the outside. So I kept this first one to take a look at it. So we're getting into column B. And we're updating the string on B. Updates our row. Okay, because this is checking all of B and not just all of them. Okay, okay. So that's the difference there. We have to pass in a particular list of it since we're just passing in the entire thing. So we want this, all of that row. More difficult to subflow then, since this is going to be different depending on it. This is looking at all B instead of whatever letter we're picking. So this input would be different depending on what you're putting in. We could have this be an input to the flow. So you have to check the whole thing here, but you have to check that particular list here. But you got to know which one we're looking at based off of the letters. Yeah, so we'll make this an input. We'll say it'll be the all letter, no spaces there, all letter list. So it'll be actually just the letter list for us there. So it'll be their particular letter that we're looking for from the bingo row on the outside, passing in. So now, since this one is looking at I, we're going to want to pick from our bingo type. Oh, it's from the row. So bingo's rows list. We're going to pick all I, and that's what's going to get passed in here. There we go. And now, since this was doing that, we can replace these steps here. We no longer need these 3. And this one's saying, oh, that's another check. Let's see, is it in list? And they're checking to see if it was in B. String value B. So it's also checking B. So let's see if they're all check B here in our second. So each one is going through and checking to see if the one we've just selected, if B was in any of them. So this is going through each one and saying, oh, is B in any of these that we're populating? So I guess that part can stay, whatever the value B is. Let's take a look. So we have our random number, checking to see if it's null. And this one is checking whichever letter we're passing in, and not just that constant B. I'm just wondering, does all the other letters get checked that way? Or is it only compared to B? It's possible that this was a not meant to be that way, because thinking about it, I believe each one of these is checking in that row. But I guess you don't want it, repeated across each number as well. Let's see what we can do about that, because each one of these is B in any of these rows is what it's asking for. We'll replace these off the bat though. So these three we do not need. This number's equals, so it's the loop. The loop is what's coming in. So we're sending in what iteration of the loop, probably on the outside of this flow we're working on, if it equals 2 or not. So for on the second one, they go and they update just the free space. Okay, so I guess after the first time it runs through, they come back through here and just do update a free space, because we know that's the space you want in that row. And then they continue on, because I guess this one is going and getting N. So if it's in the second iteration, we're going to make that a free space. Here, this goes through the same, different random number set. Oh, okay, so that's why, yeah, this should definitely. So we're going through and grabbing the ints different. So each row has a different chance of different things. So let me actually go back and see if that int for I, before we deleted it, was different there. It was there, so we're building up. So the range was different. This first one is 1 to 15. And from here we go 16 to 30. Okay, so we'll want to make that dynamic in our subflow as well, what we can pass in here, which is good because these can be dynamic. So quick, so we go 1 to 15 first. So let's change this instead to be our random max and min. So we'll select it from flow. I'm just going to use our add input and name this random maximum. And same thing with our minimum. Add input for random minimum. Sorry if I've got some background noise here in the office. Random min there. Okay, and those are all hooked up here. We can check to see they are typed exactly what we needed from that step. So now, when we do this one, in order to correctly or follow the way this was built in this optimization, we're going to pass in max of 30, min of 16. Min of 16 there. And since we're updating I in this subflow, we're going to do a change value on that in our original bingo structure. So for I. Okay, cool. So now we're good to get rid of that chunk of flow steps. All right. Let's move this up. We can go down here. This could be this. Swirl that over. Drag. Oh, our line is so upset. There we go. This one's checking loop equals, so we can rename this one for it and say two on our second iteration there. Drag in our scroll bar. See if we can move that up. All right, and this is our second chunk of those same 3 repeated steps for the letter N. It's either going to be we're making it a free space, or we need to go through that same process. So let's save, checkpoint, or we're mapping in that section. And we are going to just pull in a lot of the same stuff. So I'm just copying there. And I'm going to Control V to paste in that subflow. So right now it's pulling in exactly the mappings that I set up here. But we're going to remap and change it up to be for this letter N. Okay. Can select here. Bring that over. We know this one's going to be, okay, 31 to 45. So we can update that. 31. Oh, sorry, wrong side there. 45 is our max. 31 is our min. And instead of passing through all I, we're going to change this to be all N. And that's a quick way to select that for us. Let's see, string to continue. We're going to change this one because it's going to now be N. Click back off and back on, make sure that's saved. Okay, good. Got our mix max, so everything is updated there. Now our change value, again, we're going to swap this off because we want it to be changing values, updating what we have for N here. Okay, so this is the same. Replace that. We just updated that. 31:45 is good. String is in list. Delete that because we also have that one ready to go. All right, shift this touch up. Save for us. Pull this all up. So you can just see just as we've been going, we still haven't even replaced our initial one yet, just how much of that logic we've been able to replace there with a subflow and kind of making some generic inputs that we're passing in. It saves you a lot of processing on the outside. So same thing's happening. It's just all condensed and reusable now, as well as easier to debug. If you have smaller subflows, you can test out, oh, where's the error happening just in this particular subflow. You can have a unit test on that. Okay, it looks like we're kicking into the next set for G. So I'll disconnect here. This just moves directly into starting G from where we were before. So I'm gonna copy and paste. Oops, I don't want to move that one. Such a mess over here. Put that down. And we can actually drop this directly below it on our true path there. So these get lined up all nice. And if you ever really, really want to get everything lined up, you can turn on the grid up top for view and show grid. It's probably a bit overkill for it, depending on what you want to do. But if you have a lot of stuff, it could be useful there. But it's something you can take a look at. So I like to rename everything first over in the side. This one's going to be, we're working on G, was it? G, yep. So in our step information, quick place to change your name, that labeling. And we're going to go through and update everything. So since a lot of these mappings, they're coming from the same place, you can quickly just type in that select from flow box and it'll give you all those prompts you can work with instead of having to go through and select it all again. Okay, and random numbers we're probably going to do, okay, 46 and 60. So here's going to be 60 and 46 for our min. Right, and let's check everything. We got to do that output to change that now to bingo, and we want to change update our G for us there. So I'll double check. We got the list is the same, G 4650, and the letter index that we're passing in. Great. So now we can swap out these. Looks like they're all going into our next iteration of that loop. So I'm just gonna separate them and delete those. Okay. Now, I think this actually needs to go here as well, because these are the two options for the path for N. This one's going to update N with the selective update. This one is going to go and grab a random number for N. So this needs to connect down following bingo logic. And while we're at it, let's go back and actually update our initial 3. So I should still have it. You can check your clipboard too. Clipboard, I don't know. Let's see, got chat. All right. Yep. So if there aren't any questions, we can wrap this up here, but basically a good highlight of the use of subflows there, but they're very useful and definitely helps condense all this logic up. So we see we'll use it one more time here, as well as this initial time, which where we took the logic from to make our subflow in the first place. So if anybody has any questions, we could end it there for today. Maybe 15 minutes back, go and test making your own bingo board and let me know how it goes. All right, everybody, have a great Monday. Enjoy your day.